Most of us think of taxes as, well, a penalty for making money. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the tax code is less of a penalty and more of a complex engine with all these built-in ways to actually lower your bill? So today, we're gonna pop the hood on that engine and see exactly how it's designed to work. So let's just start with this one big foundational question. Is the tax code simply a penalty for earning a paycheck? Or is it something else entirely? A roadmap, maybe? A set of directions that's actually showing you exactly where the government wants your money to go? And it turns out, after some expert analysis, the answer is pretty clear. It's designed to be a really powerful system of incentives. And if you truly want to understand how to lower your taxes, you've got to first get a handle on the why behind every single tax break. This quote right here gets to the absolute heart of it. Look, the government has big economic goals, but it knows it can't do it all alone. It doesn't want to be the country's only landlord or the only employer. So what does it do? It uses the tax code to encourage you to step up and do things like provide housing or create jobs. And this is the most crucial point to grasp. Tax breaks are not random gifts. They're very deliberate policy tools. You should think of every single one as a reward for providing something the government has decided the economy needs, whether that's more housing, new businesses, or more jobs. Okay, so how does the government actually create these powerful incentives? Well, the first major mechanism, and you could argue it's one of the most powerful engines for tax reduction ever built, is through real estate. The magic word here is depreciation. It's what creates a paper loss. Now, what does that mean? Basically, the government lets you deduct a slice of your building's value every single year for, theoretical wear and tear. But here's the kicker. You get this huge tax deduction even while your property is almost certainly going up in real-world value. It's an incredible way to lower your taxable income without actually spending a dime. But wait, it gets even better. Investors can turbocharge this whole effect with something called a cost segregation study. This is basically a deep dive analysis that identifies all the little parts of a building that aren't structural. We're talking carpets, light fixtures, appliances, you name it. The tax code lets you write off these items way faster, like over 5 to 15 years, instead of the usual 27.5 years for the building itself. So the process itself is surprisingly straightforward. An investor buys a property, they order one of these studies, and the result? They get to pull decades worth of future tax deductions and cram them all into the very first year they own the place. This creates a massive, immediate paper loss. Just to put a real number on it, for a property where the building is worth, say, $500,000, a cost segregation study could easily spit out a first-year deduction of $120,000. Now, that paper loss is almost always enough to completely wipe out any rental income from the property. And as we're about to see, a whole lot more. Okay, let's shift gears and look at the second core mechanism. This one isn't about what you own, it's all about how you earn your money. Because, you see, the tax code has basically two different sets of rules. There's one for employees, and then there's a whole other one for business owners. And the difference is just fundamental. As a W-2 employee, you get paid, the government immediately takes its cut right off the top, and then you get to live on what's left. But as a business owner, it's a completely different game. You earn income, then you subtract all your legitimate business expenses, and you're only taxed on the profit that's left over at the end. And a very common way for business owners to set this up is through what's called a pass-through entity. This is so critical because it lets you avoid what's known as double taxation. The business itself pays zero tax. Instead, all the profits just pass right through directly onto the owner's personal tax return. Okay, so you see the two pieces, right? On one side, we have these giant paper losses from real estate. On the other, we have income from a job or a business. So the million-dollar question is, how do savvy investors actually connect the two to just crush their tax bill? This right here is the core strategy. The whole game is about generating enough of these paper losses to completely cancel out your other income. But there's usually a catch. The tax code typically has a firewall that stops you from using what it calls passive losses from rental properties to offset your active income from your day job. But, of course, there's a workaround. The tax code has a very specific, very powerful exception built right in for short-term rentals. You see, if the average guest stays for 7 days or less and you are actively involved in managing the property, the government says, okay, that's not passive anymore. And that right there is the key that unlocks the door, allowing you to use those huge paper losses from depreciation to wipe out the taxes on your regular salary. And this chart just shows you the incredible result. Let's say you have someone with a $100,000 salary. They could use a $120,000 short-term rental loss from their short-term rental to completely offset that income. And as you can see, their final taxable income for the year drops to zero. They have legally eliminated their entire income tax bill. So when you finally put all these pieces together on the table, you start to realize something. These aren't just a bunch of random, isolated loopholes. They actually form a single, intentional, interconnected system. It's a framework that's designed not just to cut your taxes this year, but to build real wealth over the long term. And this brings us to the final piece of the long-term puzzle, the step up in basis. This means that when someone inherits an asset, like a piece of real estate, all of the capital gains that built up over the original owner's entire lifetime are just legally forgiven. Poof, gone. The tax clock completely resets and then allows that wealth to pass to the next generation without triggering a massive tax bill. So the ultimate takeaway is really this. The tax system isn't random at all. It has a very clear logic. It is deliberately, structurally built to reward the people who provide the very things the economy needs to run. Capital for new investments, housing for people to live in, and jobs for the workforce. And all of this leaves us with one final big question to think about. We've seen that the tax code has totally different rule books for employees, for investors, and for business owners. So maybe, just maybe, the key to building wealth isn't just about how much you earn, but about having the financial literacy to understand which game you've chosen to play.